If any of you are anything like me and have shined your crystal balls thinking about the future of e-commerce and digital across the world, you believe, like I do, that agents are going to serve as a proxy for consumers and for brands moving forward. But there are some big, big data dependencies. So today we're going to bring up this panel led by Sharon Gee, who's going to help lead the track and introduce our panelists. So let's get rowdy.
Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. I'm particularly excited because this topic of how do we move from direct-to-consumer to A2A, this kind of D2C to A2A, and what do we need to do from a data perspective in order to take advantage of one of the most seismic shifts that we've seen in the industry, which is the front door of shopping is changing, and how consumers are discovering and buying products is changing very quickly. And that requires merchants to be, really agile in what they need to be able to do to enrich the data to power the catalog changes that need to happen in order to take advantage of this future. So we're going to go ahead and do some introductions. Owen, go ahead.
Awesome. Hey, I'm Owen, Director of Enterprise Applications at Revelyst. Revelyst is a collection of brands. We're brand-led, we're maker-fueled, and we're consumer-obsessed. Primarily, I oversee Fox, Bell, Giro, Camelback, Copilot, and a number of other outdoor brands. I've been working with Feedonomics for a long time and excited to go along on this journey.
Taz.
Taz Patel, lead advertising and shopping at Perplexity. Perplexity is an answer engine. We are trying to give you the best answer to the most curious questions. And today we'll talk about our shopping product.
Wonderful. Amira?
Hi, I'm Amira Khalil. I'm a director of sales at Feedonomics, so I get to sit in some wonderful conversations with our most important clients, and we're learning about the AI journey, and we work with some of the largest global brands, and we're thrilled to be here to talk a little bit about the AI way we think about things as we progress into the year.
Awesome. And my name is Sharon Gee, and I lead the product organization associated with our AI investments across the ecosystem of BigCommerce, Feedonomics, and Makeswift properties. And it's been really fun to be able to work really closely with these folks in order to kind of dig in. So we'll get started. I think we're going to ground ourselves in a little bit of data. I think what's amazing is that we're seeing this industry shift very, very quickly. 58% of consumers have already started changing how they're searching for products. So raise of hands, who uses an AI search app on your phone every day? How many of you have maybe typed into it, hey, you're looking for a product, you give it context that allows it to recommend those products to you. So we're starting to already see this experience as consumers of the, and utilization here. And what I think is really interesting is that it's estimated that, LLM traffic is actually going to eclipse organic traffic by 2018. And what's really interesting to me is as this new framework has kind of emerged around how people discover products online, when we go into these conversations with Perplexity and various different other AI search consumer experiences, is they're not the merchant of record. They're not going to be that. Payments, tax, fraud, shipping, fulfillment, all of the data that is associated with delivering a quality product customer experience, they need that data from merchants. And so that puts a really interesting focus on kind of how do we deliver search and discovery experiences via these shopping agents. So that's kind of the framing of what we're going to talk about today. And I think what we're seeing, and I want to kick off some questions here, is what we're seeing is that because consumers are increasingly relying on AI in order to make these decisions, merchants are now in a position to have to completely change how they think about the data that they surface to these channels. So we're going to first start with Taz, and we're going to say, what are you seeing in terms of consumer experience? Like how is it changing? What are we seeing in this new paradigm?
Yeah, so Perplexity leverages AI to synthesize an answer, and based on that query question that someone has, if there's commercial intent in it, you'd get a different experience within Perplexity, something that might show visuals or reviews if there's a particular product in mind, like a Bell helmet or something like that, who it's coming from, who the merchant is. But we didn't know necessarily if people were ready to buy within Perplexity until we launched shopping over 6 months ago. So originally, every answer sort of looked and felt the same. Maybe you get some bullet points. Then we sort of evolved knowing different categories. A lot of our power users were coming from technology or finance. So you started getting visualizations and maybe some different charts and things like that to help sort of visualize those answers more effectively. And then we introduced shopping, kind of band-aided together and launched it Black Friday of last year, just to see if people would start their journey in Perplexity, where they're asking questions and discovering and maybe moving down the funnel and comparing the products that they're actually reviewing. and are they ready to click and ready to buy, right? And so over the past, I guess that's 9 months ago, we've really sort of proven out that this is happening within Perplexity. This commercial intent of queries is continuing to increase. Now that we've introduced our sort of power users to it, we've seen that it's continuing to grow day over day in terms of total volume of sales. So we believe this is happening, whether it's in Perplexity or elsewhere, and so we need to build for it. And I think that we went from 1% to about 5% of total queries that had shopping intent earlier through Q2, and you can imagine since then we've continued to see that increase. And obviously, there'll be efficiencies gained based on volume of sales, types of sales, but it's kind of challenging because this user behavior is different, but the technology doesn't necessarily fit what's been done traditionally.
Love that. So, Owen, we're going to move to you. As what are you starting to see in terms of traffic that's coming in from these channels, and how are you starting to think about it? I think Revelyst is one of the groups that's actually really leading in, through your work. So talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing now and what you're anticipating near term.
Totally, yeah. So, it's something where we've kind of had our finger on the pulse for the past few years as we've seen this come to market. We've seen these changes happening, and it's one of those things probably similar to a lot of you where we're like, where is this going to go? Is this going to be the future of commerce? And what we've seen almost in those same timelines is we've seen this traffic kind of hockey stick through services like Perplexity. So we're seeing the traffic come in. Full transparency, it's not surpassing Google for us right now, but it's something that it is catching our attention, and it's really kind of had us go back to this shift of historically kind of going from this idea of taking in consumer data, trying to segment, how do you get them to your site, how do you sell them once you get to their site. So that's traditionally where we've kind of operated. Now it's really this swing back, and we're saying, okay, how do we actually get all of our product data out to tools like Perplexity so that we can actually serve? We use the term rider first at Revelyst, how do we put the rider first? So for us, it's not necessarily going to be about short or long tail keyword where somebody's typing in maybe features or functionality, but it's how are we actually solving the problem for that end user? How are we giving our partners like Perplexity the data that they need to surface the right answers? Like you said, you're an answer engine. You really want to build that trust. You want to make sure that you're giving relevant answers. And so now we've gone into a system where we're really sending that data back out to surface where those riders are doing their research, where they're looking for information. And as those services continue to grow and we have longer understanding about how that user shops, how that person interacts with that world, how they think, what are their kind of, what are the nuances of their affinity, that's all going to feed into the data that we're sending in, and that's why we partner with Feedonomics to understand how do we get our raw data out, and how does that differ between maybe a channel like a Meta, a Google, compared to something like a Perplexity.
I think that's a great overview and a wonderful segue. So Amira, we're seeing some changes. It used to be that we were a shopper and we would go to a merchant's website and, just like Owen talked about, and we would buy things. And now we're starting to see this experience where there's a shopping agent, let's say Perplexity, that is going to interface with the merchant. And that's kind of where we are very near term, like right now. And then eventually it's going to be like the shopper agent interacts with the merchant agent. So how is Feedonomics thinking about how to prepare people's data in order to be able to take advantage of that future?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, we talk about it in real time during these strategic business reviews where we sit down and kind of understand a roadmap. And AI is in the topic for every single client. And actually, Owen and I had a really good kind of real-time example where we were understanding some of their initiatives, as Sharon's mentioned, to launch to a Perplexity or anything that is exactly the same idea of saying, hey, long gone are the days where we're just sending feeds to Google and we're creating data that matches the required schema for Google. Now we are the bridge in between the brand and the channel. And so we sit down, we have dedicated enterprise feed managers who become these additional support folks who are eyes and ears on the ground with best practices across all of the channels and platforms, so that they say, hey, you have to have kind of, I think we've kind of looked at it level 1, 2, 3, and 4 for data, and maybe it's the level 1 is the title and the descriptions, like the basics, but it gets all the way up to what kind of data is available and what are you not sending Feedonomics that you should, and in order to do that, at what stage is that appropriate for us to then map to a Perplexity. And so we have some really incredible conversations because, just like Owen has mentioned, every brand is on a different journey and a different cycle, and so we have to be able to accurately understand where they're at, where they want to be, and then understand the partnerships that we have with incredible folks like Perplexity and stuff, to say, hey, these are the things that we know and we understand that are really applicable and important for your team to prioritize today if you want to get there in 6 months or if you want to get there in 3 months. So we're the people who are going to help be a liaison and a guide to make sure that you're leveraging the internal resources that you have and pointing the resources in the right direction at the right time to execute on planned timelines that we hope that the clients will share with us, because that's something we need to know to partner with you better.
Taz, partnership is a wonderful, summary of like, how do we do this in quickly and at scale? Give us some of your take on like how you're thinking about partners and how to leverage them in order to take advantage of what you guys are building literally every day.
Yeah, I mean, the journey has been painful, but in an exciting way. Originally, we started reaching out to like sort of top GMV merchants directly, realizing that everything is different. And then we're like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's figure out if there's like a one-to-many approach, because there are existing schemas in place with traditional search engines, and we don't want our partners, both the merchants, to have to redo everything from scratch. We're not expecting that. We would never want that to be the case, but we can use that baseline and build off of it. So when you bring up structured data versus unstructured data, at Perplexity, we love unstructured data. This is like the power of AI. So if there's like different descriptions or reviews or context that's just not really filtered through a checkbox or a taxonomy that's sort of traditional, like that's fine, give it to us. And let the AI figure out the best answer to serve that user based on the nuances of that question. So it's sort of partially for us is being able to scale the business. Like we spend most of our time, all of our time trying to get you the best answers. So sometimes we need to build and work with partners where we don't have that expertise. And so Feedonomics and our partnership we're announcing this week really enables us to scale that to serve you, the merchants, that much faster. Because in the end, we want you to get the best answer. And then the second part is like, how do you actually buy that product, which is super important for folks.
So we're going to walk a little bit through the experience that we're talking about here. And Owen and Taz, feel free to riff around this, but and then we'll go back and talk about like, where are you now with the data that you have? And then what do we need to do in order to get from like level 1 to level 5 data to really ground the results and give the context to the LLMs, that search experiences that are necessary in order to deliver that product search and discovery that you're looking for. So let's first talk about this, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is a great example of kind of that consumer shift that we're seeing, where it goes less from a traditional Google search, I need a helmet, maybe, helmet, top rated, best helmet, safest, whatever, to really coming in this example, I need a new trail helmet. I primarily ride in the Pacific Northwest. What should I look at? And so Perplexity is great of surfacing data, things that I want to be thinking about. And then as we see it goes through kind of that traditional shopping funnel. For us, something that's really important, something we've worked extremely hard with, I started off Revelyst, we are brand led. So for us, things like brand imagery is super important. The descriptions are very important for us. We want to make sure that when an end user is seeing our product, that it's reflective of the brand and the way that we want to position ourselves. So now what we're seeing is kind of this shift from kind of this scrape approach to kind of get whatever's out there into how do we get the data to our partners like Perplexity, specifically around unstructured data. And I think one of the cool things that we're seeing there is that you might actually be surprised about how much of this data you already have, but you haven't found a use case for it yet. One of the things we were talking about earlier was looking at things like we've got product videos that are maybe focused more towards sales folks, or maybe it's really heavy technical jargon where if you're in the industry, this makes sense. But as a consumer, that doesn't translate to your needs. So really being able to take all that data from reviews, from videos, from long marketing copy, from go-to-market campaigns, feed that in, associate it with specific SKUs. And so now Perplexity has the ammo that they need to serve up the best answer for that user.
Love that. Yes, please.
And like part of that data, that's perfect. By the way, thanks for doing the slides there. Yeah. That's a real example. When we ingest this information, our goal is to create trust with our users. And so by having accurate information, as you see in these slides, like the price is correct, the shipping times would be correct, the reviews are correct. When you crawl, there's a delay that, if you have like a Black Friday sale or a sales event, like we don't want that delay to cause a bad experience for someone engages with the context within Perplexity and all of a sudden it's sold out when it said it was available, or the price is more than they expected. So our goal is to create trust with these users that come to Perplexity every day. And everything you see here is we're not monetizing this. This is really to create the best experience for our users. Commercialization is something we'll think about long term, and really right now it's about how do we enable merchants to become visible within Perplexity accurately and find that connection between the user that wants to purchase that product.
I love that you're talking about trust and that we need, there's all of this work that has been done for many years in order to optimize the experience across channels. And now there's new channels emerging that have unprecedented level of users that now we have to pivot really quickly and make that happen. Amira, when we talk about the experience and the data that is required in order to be able to power that, what are some of the things that, you work with some of the large, 30% of the Internet Retailer 1000 with our customers. What are some of the challenges that they're seeing, and how is Feedonomics thinking about addressing that use case?
That's a really great question. We've been doing a huge initiative with getting what's like the listening tour, right? And kind of understanding the main pain points. What I'm seeing is that the speed and the lack of speed is really getting in people's way. And so, and I say that kindly because I understand there's many systems at play, there's many teams you have to get buy-in, there's like a whole myriad of different setups within each company. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, just get this team to do this and it's gonna work. But if we can help speed that up, that is where people are really getting to adopt this quickly and then scale it fast. And so Owen is somebody who I've been working with for a number of years, but he'll come to me with the idea ahead of time, kind of before the rollout. And we have incredible brains who are much more focused on the AI structure. Janet she's not here, but she's amazing. And she's famous in our company. And she comes in and she'll kind of help piece together all of the moving parts to showcase the streamlined efficiencies that are required and can kind of help us point, like with Owen, we can say, hey, this might be this team. And so all of that to say, Sharon, is that we want to be able to help prepare data readiness for agility and making decisions quickly, but also having the data within your own internal teams to understand the internal lift it's going to take to actually launch. And so that's like one of the main issues. And then I also think not having a plan has been a big conversation where some people are just starting to think about it, which is fine. But I mean, you can see how the world has evolved in the last 6 months for AI. If you don't already have a plan in place, you're behind. And so creating the infrastructure in your own team and your own roadmap to understand where you want to be is something that I think the people who are thinking about it today are going to be standing a lot stronger. And then when we look at the end of the year, then maybe those who are just starting to think about AI in their strategy.
I love that as part of the discussions in preparation for this, we were saying, okay, well, what are some of the actionable things that we can think about when, in that data maturity curve that you need to be able to take advantage of in order to be able to go from the kind of like level 1 to level 5 participation to be getting all of that data together within your own systems and then into one-to-many partners, like you mentioned, in order to get it into Perplexity to take advantage of that context. So this is kind of one of the ways that we were thinking through kind of, if level 1 data is what you send to Google now, and level 2 data is like data that's coming out of your systems of record, like your PIM, and level 3 is the data attributes that you send to something like Amazon, where they're merchant of record, but you still remain merchant of record. Levels 3 and 4 are like unstructured brand data that is verified by the brand. So I loved your examples of the YouTube videos where you can pull the transcripts and feed all that rich technical content to the channels. And then unstructured data that is not created by the brand, but Quora, interestingly, is like being cited as sources in a lot of this, as well as things like user reviews and others. So what are some of the things that you focus on, Taz, when you're thinking about how do we provide the best context for the users to be able to make sure that you deliver that kind of trusted experience you're talking about?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's still sort of evolving, like how we present that information. Today we have these product cards, as you saw in the screenshots. And that's just one output we have for the experience of users, right? So I think what we're trying to figure out is, okay, is it visuals? Is it video? Like, what is the modality that matters most? And I think that's probably where you're gonna see the most changes from Perplexity, is sort of how that sort of renders within our UI. But in the end, what powers that is the data, right? So everything that we do direct is, not just a sense of like trust for our users, but for us, we take that as accuracy too. So we don't want to have that mismatch I described earlier, but more so it's, that is going to be taking precedent over something that's crawled, for instance. And so therefore, if we're going to render that in the UI, I think, marketers and merchants can start thinking about, okay, well, do we need to like update our stuff internally to sort of match these unique sort of longer questions that folks are asking to make sure that context is pulling in? It's like the feed solved for the shopping experience, but there's still some of this like tangential information that I think is quite important from the organic answers that are coming up in Perplexity. So I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the UI. Accuracy is super important, and I think marketers can start thinking about that. And based on bandwidth and partners and how we can do that, like we are here as a resource. Just mind you that we're sort of focused on the search side, so partners like Feedonomics can help us build for the shopping native experience.
I just heard change is inevitable, and so agility is going to be important, right? I heard that data straight to the veins that's not crawled is going to be the best way to deliver that context that's going to be necessary to make sure that you're delivering that trusted experience, and that merchants are going to need to be able to respond quickly to do so.
Indeed.
We have 1 minute left. I would love to go to each of you to talk about kind of what are some of our commerce next steps as it relates to how to be data ready for this AI era. If data is the new storefront, what are the recommendations you have for the audience here?
Yeah, I'd say my biggest one is to don't be scared about moving fast, and it's okay to not know where things are going, but still keep on moving. Don't let that hold you back. In mountain biking, we use this kind of terminology of like eyes out, stay loose. And so you might not know what's around that next corner, but you know there's going to be something, you're going to be prepared for it. So with all the change that's happening, astronomical. I mean, over the 6 months, it's been just huge. And so I just like encourage you, if you don't have a plan, make a plan. If you have a plan, keep refining it, be curious, and just be prepared to move fast because it is a race at this point.
Amira?
Yeah, I think if you're an existing client of Feedonomics, I would say get loud. There's many times where we sit in a room and we're having these conversations and we uncover because we're sort of pulling and asking, but like tell me what your strategy is, tell me what the plan is, because you have these trusted advisors in the back end from the feed perspective, but then you also have people who are working with many of the important channels that we can say, wait a second, we support that, like let's go ahead and do that for you, no problem, right? And if you're not with Feedonomics at this point, I would recommend a feed audit where we would take your data in the way that it stands today and run a complementary audit and look at it through the lens of the AI readiness. And so there's many ways, and I'm sure there's going to be a QR code where you can scan and kind of get in touch with us. But advocate for yourself and what your roadmap is, and maybe look at the feeds a little bit differently. We're no longer just sending feeds to Google or powering your feeds on Amazon. We are truly the hub of being able to support some very swift and agile initiatives, and we're going to be the bridge between the brand and the channels.
And Taz, as we move into this agent-to-agent world, what are you going to leave us with?
I mean, I think, be AI curious, experience all these platforms, and even though we're not, we're traditionally been used to clicks to conversions, kind of think beyond that and think about your brand holistically. And I think a lot of the stuff, like the infrastructure and solutions we have today, can get us that near-term setup with APIs and direct feeds. And then we can talk about the longer vision around potential integrations and leveraging MCPs. Like there's a lot of buzzwords that are out there, but like the stuff exists today to get going. So if you're AI curious and you're just think beyond the click, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to work together.
Awesome. I love the comments around AI literacy and like now's the moment to get started. I think a lot of people feel like they're a little bit behind, but I think if you can get your data right and build for what's next, you'll be able to drive the change. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.